Hi, I'm glad you're here. Today I want to talk about um, part three of just providing some clarification to the research proposal. Um, I'm briefly going to cover the next four sections in the proposal: research question and hypotheses, a definition of terms, assumptions, and methods. Um, the research question, it should shape and specifically focus the purpose of the study. So it's important. It's the it's the question your research will answer. And then pairs of hypotheses are typically used to further define that question, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. They're written in pairs to include a null and an alternative, and the text also explains this. The hypotheses, they should be clearly stated. They should be possible to research centers. You want your research to be able to answer the question posed by the hypothesis. You want them linked to the concepts or theories in the literature. You want to identify the unit of analysis, and it needs to be clear about relationships. So it's focused on outcomes. Your pairs of hypotheses, they make a statement. You're making a statement about something that may be true. That's your research hypothesis. And then when you write them out, start with the null, and the null simply is stated such as that the means are equal, or any differences are random. In other words, there's no differences. And then you list the research hypothesis that the means are not equal and that the differences are significant. Now here's an example of the convention of how they're written. Normally in dissertations we use the subscript 0 for the null and the subscript A for the research hypothesis. The text model's 0 and a number 1. That's okay either way. And you want to write them in that order. A lot of times research proposals have more than one pair of hypotheses, so you simply write them H1 for hypothesis 1, H2 for hypothesis 2. So you can see here's the first one's the null. Students who view this presentation score the same as those who do not on the paper. And then the research alternative, students who view this presentation score higher than those who do not. An example, it's when you use standardized instruments, it's very common to have multiple sets of hypotheses. For example, if I was going to use the standardized test, the Thomas-Kilmann, there's 5 scales in that Thomas-Kilmann. So I would have let's say if I'm wondering what's the relationship between conflict style and team cohesion. So I'd have a hypothesis for each style. So hypothesis 1 might, the null would be there's no difference between the conflict style of accommodation and team cohesion, and then the research hypothesis that there is a correlation. Hypothesis 2 would be the next one, like avoiding. 3 would be competing, and so altogether there's 5 styles, so I would have 10 hypotheses. Okay, you also need to define terms. Now, you know from our text, the operational definition is you define the variables in the terms of the operations or techniques that you plan to use or manipulate. And also, if you're using any terms that are unique or used in a unique way, you want to provide a definition and then tie your definition to the literature. Now, someone in the literature should have a definition that's provided. Assumptions are pretty straightforward. It's a small section. You just list the assumptions you assume to be true in order for your study to be valid. For example, participants provided honest, unbiased responses. Okay, methods and procedures. This really is the most important section because that's really what the class is about. And it's not tricky, it's straightforward. You just need to make sure you provide all the information. For example, what's the population? That's the large group. The sample is selected from the population. So you want to describe both the population and the sample. Describe how you'll select the sample. Quantitative study, you're probably going to select it randomly. If it's qualitative, probably you're going to use purposive. If you use standardized tests, you want to give the name of the test and the author, but also include the reliability and validity, and you can get that from Mental Measurements Yearbook in the library. Describe the research procedures. In other words, what are you going to do? Describe the process. Here's what I intend to do in the research. This is important. This is how others have a chance to review what you're doing. Also, describe your research design. That's really important. The class is about that. In other words, using a post-test, pre-test, post-test, or experimental. Is it quantitative, correlational, or is it a qualitative case study? What are you doing? What type of data analysis do you plan to do? For example, you have multiple variables. You're using an experimental design, so you're going to do analysis of variance. So you want to state, here's what I plan to do. Now, in the discussion section, this is a proposal. You will not have conducted this research. So what are you going to do? Well, you just review your hypotheses and how you think your study will answer these questions, and then describe your expected results or possible outcomes. Here's what I expect will happen. What would be the implications of your study? In other words, what might be important about it? What are some limitations of your study? And are there any future research ideas based upon this study? In other words, after this, the next logical step would be to do what? And then include implications, brief summary. In the implications section, just do a brief summary of your proposal, and then why would this study be important? In other words, in what way would it contribute to the literature or advance knowledge in the field? And so that's a couple of paragraphs that describe that. I use the text and this Bradley source for this. I'll include this PowerPoint when I upload this. Thanks.